100% funded. And so there have been proposals through the years to maybe add on 10 years to that amortization. So basically, it again is like refinancing your house. Your payments go down now, but you're going to pay longer, that kind of thing. So this summer, and I think maybe at the next meeting this last summer, the board, one of their statutory responsibilities is to set that assumed rate of return on investments. And so it had been 8% for a long time, and then about 6 years ago went 7.75, and that's, you know, it's maybe one of the key factors, because if you have $25 billion and you're going to assume what are you going to earn on it over the next 30 or 40 years, you know, whatever that, even a small adjustment has a big impact, because you're going to do that. And as the board decided after much study and the consultants and all those things, they decided to lower it from 7.75 down to 7%, 0.75%. But again, you're talking about 25 billion. You're looking at what does that cost you? 0.75% out 30 or 40 or 50 years. And so as they did that, it increased that unfunded liability by $2.7 billion with the B, because now there'll be less income on the investment side projected going out that long ways. And of course, then that falls the unfunded liability, which falls to the employer to eventually pay. And so to help, one of the things to mitigate a big increase on the employer side for lowering that assumed rate of return was they did add for CAPERS, they added 6 years to that mortgage on the house on the amortization period. So rather than having it extinguished or 100% paid in 2033, now it'll be 2039 is the projection. And so they did add, long answer to your question, they added 6 years to that amortization period.
And just for the good of the committee, we do have Alan coming back next week. I believe we're going to get a little more into the weeds on the assumption rate of return and all that stuff. So, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman Conroy. Very good. I appreciate you always taking my calls, and you're a true gentleman. I would like to say, Secretary Johnson, it was a pleasure to be on your committee, and you helped CAPERS a tremendous amount. So thank you. Mr. Conroy, you talked about the lockbox, the amount of money. I think that's really misunderstood amongst a lot of people. A lot of people think we have taken money out of it. And I tell them, no, you can't. And but when a man retires or a woman retires, they can take a certain amount of their money. So all their money is not put in the lockbox right away then. Is that correct?
That's right. When a person gets ready to retire, they can take it's called a partial lump sum. So for CAPERS 1 and CAPERS 2, they can take up to 50%. It's on an actuarial calculated basis. And then, so they can take up to 50%, and then their lifetime benefit is adjusted downward accordingly. CAPERS 3, it's up to 30%, I guess CAPERS 2 as well. But yes, they can take some of it out when they retire.
You were talking about CAPERS 3. When they first start working, the employer will match 3%. How long does it take to get to 6%?
25 years. So 25 years, right? 24, excuse me. 24. Yes, a couple decades.
But it'll go to 4% before that?
It stair steps up in 1% increments based on service, but by the 24th year, the employer is contributing 6%.
Thank you. One more question, if I could. On the unfunded liability, which is, I don't know, approximately $8 billion, do we pay 7% on that?
It's $9.8 billion. So it's a real number, lots of zeros. But that's, that's the calculation that goes in when that actuary does that employer calculation. She's going to assume that we're going to earn that 7% on those contributions whenever they're paid. And so I guess it may be a little simplistic, but that's what I say. CAPERS is charging the employer 7% for those contributions that haven't been satisfied at this point.
Thank you. I really appreciate you always taking my calls and helping me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a thought that the return-based dividend will not be paid this year because of the market forces?
Actually, it's a 5-year rolling average, and I don't know, Jared, if we looked at it yet, if it'll probably not. Yeah, I'm guessing, yeah, probably not. So again, there's a calculation that Treasurer Johnson helped develop. And so, but that formula, but I think probably right now we'd assume there would not be a dividend. So there, an additional dividend, so it'd just be the 4%.
Thank you, Ms. Conway.
Representative Dotson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just like we did for the last couple of years, we're already getting cards and letters on COLA and maybe the misunderstanding of what a defined benefit, or in some cases, a fixed benefit means, as well as suggestion for a 13th pay period. Can you talk about that a little bit, just so we kind of know how to respond?
Right. I mean, you're correct. It's a defined benefit plan, so there's no statutory or requirement obligation to provide a cost of living adjustment for retirees. CAPERS is certainly, I guess, in minority in the nation. A lot of retirement, other public pension plans have some type of automatic or required cost of living adjustment to their retirement benefits, but it's not part of the CAPERS plan design, which means it's not been pre-funded, which is how CAPERS works. Contributions are paid, interest is earned, and then the money's there when the person gets ready to retire. Unlike Social Security, where current contributions are going out to pay current retirees. So it's not pre-funded. So if the legislature wants to grant a cost of living adjustment, it would the legislature could either write a check, and again, you could design it however much you wanted to spend, but if you wanted to spend $200 million on a COLA or a 13th check, it's about maybe $150, $160 million. So that would add to the unfunded liability. So the legislature could pay for it up front, or I think actuarial standards, you could pay for that increase over, let's say, 15 years and amortize that obligation. I will say in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, the legislature, not every year, but pretty close, every other year, granted some type of cost of living adjustment to members. The last one was in 2008. It was a one-time benefit of $300, but to qualify, you had to be retired 10 years. So anybody that's retired from CAPERS since 1998 has not gotten a cost of living adjustment. But again, it's not part of the current plan design.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any further questions? Representative Dono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when if you give a cost of living increase, does the retiree actually end up paying for that in the long term if it's reamortized or anything? Or is that strictly the employer?
It would fall to the employer.
All right, thank you. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just from an historical standpoint, my understanding is that when the teacher plan came in to CAPERS, it was just about bankrupt. And the work of the board and you and others have essentially rescued that. Would you address that?
It was, I mean, by plan design, the old school retirement system, and it had some different parts to it, parts, but it was basically, the large part of it was a pay-as-you-go system. So it was kind of like Social Security. And so rather than being a pre-funded system like CAPERS, where you're accumulating those benefits, those contributions, when you get ready, the person gets ready to retire, they're there. It was more a pay-as-you-go system. And so when that decision was made in the early 70s to merge it in with regular CAPERS, the system, those members, there were not a lot of assets that came with those with that membership. And as you know, it's the largest group, the CAPERS school. Plus, it's part of CAPERS now 10 years less than regular CAPERS. Regular CAPERS started in the early 60s, schools in the early 70s. So that means 10 less years to accumulate contributions and investment earnings over time. And of course, there were decisions, again, budgetary constraints in terms of appropriate funding for the old school retirement system. And once it got to Capers, that some of that funding maybe didn't quite materialize as originally planned.
And follow up then, so the funded liability, when that came in, was 50-60%. I mean, we've worked our way back.
Yes,
correct?
and actually it was probably way less than that. I'm trying to remember, maybe in the 20% or something. It was not clearly not adequately funded, certainly by today's pension funding standards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. We do have you back, I believe, next Wednesday. Again, we'll get a little deeper into the weeds on some of the numbers. So thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you. Certainly glad to be here and appreciate the time.
I do want to recognize our state treasurer, former chairman of this committee, Stephen Johnson. Welcome. You just can't stay away from pensions. It's great to have you here, and thank you, as Representative Smith said, thank you for all your work the last few years on Capers. Our system is much better because of your service. So thank you, sir. Committee, that's it for today. We are meeting Monday. I believe we have a few presentations and reports from legislative research. So we will see you all Monday at 9 a.m. Thank you.